Jay Bond, let me on. Let me debate you. No. Get your own YouTube channel. Let's see. Barry Miller, I enjoyed your interview of Dr. Staples. Oh, thank you. Guys, if you haven't seen the interview I did last week with Jason Staples, so we've done 2 amazing interviews this month on Paul and Romans. And they've been 2 of my favorite episodes of Disciple Dojo by far. We did one with Dr. Joey Dodson on Romans 7. You know, I always mention Romans 7 in my Bible reviews, and there's a reason for it. So Joey Dodson wrote a whole book on it, Conquerors Not Captives, and I had him on. It was a blast. It had more pop cultural references than all of the other dojo interviews we've ever done put together. Joey's a New Testament scholar, and he's also a youth minister. And you can tell if you watch that interview. So check it out. And then we had Jason Staples on. Dr. Jason Staples has done what I believe, and I'm not being hyperbolic. I genuinely believe he has authored 2 books, but it's really one work together, but it's in 2 books. Game-changing, paradigm-changing understanding of how Paul viewed the concept of Israel in the Bible. Like, who is Israel? And what does that mean for Jews and for Gentiles? It was so good. I was so glad to have both of them. I'm honored to have both of them on the channel. So if you haven't seen those videos, those interviews, man, carve out time and watch them. It's like drinking from a fire hose. They were so good. So Barry, to your question, you said, I enjoyed the interview with Dr. Staples. If a community of Christians adopts Dr. Staples' reading of Paul, how will that community differ from current American Christianity? Well, one, they won't make this distinction, this hard distinction between the church, and Israel. 2, they will avoid the twin errors. And we talk about this in the video here that I've put up at the end of that episode. They will avoid the 2 errors of what's called replacement theology, supersessionism, and dispensational dual covenant theology. They will not be so quick to immediately give sanction to anything done by a country in the Middle East that happens to have the name Israel, as if that is the fulfillment of biblical Israel. So it'll affect politics. It'll affect evangelism. They won't think, oh, my Jewish friends, they don't need Jesus because they've got their own thing. You know, so it just, yeah, those are all the ways that I think his work could really speak to the American church. All right, Bryce Grill says, what I didn't get off your latest vid was if you believe that all Israel doesn't lead to salvation to the Jews in the future or something different. Sorry for the grammar. We didn't touch on, well, we did. I don't know if you watched the whole video, if you're referring just to the all Israel section that I cut out and posted as its own video. But basically there are a couple of different views on what Paul is saying when he says in Romans 11, and thus all Israel will be saved. There's a view that Paul is saying it should be translated, and Ben Witherington takes this view, it should be translated, and then all Israel will be saved. And Ben believes, and I disagree with Ben on this, but he believes that there will be a point in the future where all Israel comes to faith in Jesus, like this end times conversion. I think Craig Keener might take this approach too, but I'm not certain. Don't quote me on that. So that's one view, that Paul is envisioning a future massive turning to Jesus on the part of ethnic Jews. And so he equates Jews with Israel. Now, I disagree with that, and I think Staples' book pretty much shows why that is not the correct view. The other view that people have said is that, or another view, is that when Paul, he's talking about an olive tree, and that's the image he's using in Romans 11, and he's saying it's one tree. It's the root of the patriarchs. It's the seed of Abraham. It's one tree, and the branches, Jew and Gentile branches, the Jewish branches are some of the branches. And those branches that were broken off when the northern kingdom, Israel, was scattered and never regathered, like only the Jews came back from Babylonian exile, but the Israelites never really came back from the Assyrian destruction. so that they were scattered among the Gentiles. But there was the promise in the Old Testament, in the prophets, Jeremiah and Ezekiel, but particularly Jeremiah, that God will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and the house of Judah, both together, and that they would be brought in. So those branches that got broken off from the tree through unbelief would be grafted in. And what Paul's arguing in Romans 11 is that grafting in process not only includes the former Israelites who kind of were dispersed and scattered and gone by then, but also Gentiles are being grafted into the tree. And scandalously, Jewish branches are being broken off if they are rejecting Israel's Messiah. So Paul is envisioning this whole process of God grafting in unnatural branches to this olive tree that's always been there. No replacement theology. It's the same tree. Grafting in Gentiles, pruning off Jews through unbelief, but still there being a remnant of believing Jews. And then eventually, as the tree grows, Jews coming, not all, but the ones who are putting their faith in Israel Messiah, he says, God can easily graft them back in because they're the natural branches if they don't remain in unbelief. And so that is how, in the end, all Israel will be saved. And all Israel, as Jason Stables and I talked about, the emphasis is on the all in all Israel, not the Israel part, because Israel is the people of God collectively. All Israel is not just the Jews. Jews are part of Israel, but only part. There are other Israelites who God's bringing back into and grafting back into the original tree. And just like he promised to Abraham, in you, all the nations of the earth will be blessed. So the all Israel is Jew, Gentile together in the Messiah, one people. Ephesians chapter 2, Galatians chapter 3. That's what's happening. And so those are sort of the two varying views. Is he talking about just this massive end times conversion of Jews? Or is he talking about this whole process that he's unfolding in Romans 9 through 11, whereby God is rebuilding or cultivating the tree, which is all Israel? And guess what? Just like in the Old Testament, Israel is not uni-ethnic, mono-ethnic. Like even in the Old Testament, Israel was multi-ethnic. Two of the tribes were half Egyptian, Ephraim and Manasseh. Their mom was Egyptian. Ruth, she was a Moabite. Caleb, he was not a native-born Israelite. He came up with Israel out of Egypt, so he was a Kenizzite. So anyway, it's not anything new, Old Testament and New Testament. Israel has always been a people of numerous ethnicities. But what Paul is saying, how is it going to look? That's where scholars will debate. And yeah, that's why I always point that out in study Bible reviews here on the channel so that people can be aware of that discussion.